This is
I
listen.
think I go
This
there
is
too.
this is the zero panel, right? This is panel zero, the pilot. Episode
Okay.
one is going to be on point. I promise you, it's going to be everything is going to be way smoother. I'm not going to wait to the last minute. I'm terrible at planning. I ain't gonna lie, and I've been dealing with nonsense, like every day. Every day is a bunch of nonsense. So I've been very hyper busy and hyper focused on this thing. But as soon as I get that taken care of, then I can relax and actually be more present and stuff. But right now, bro, my brain is just on that 24 hours, just stuff that I got going on. So with that being said, yeah, this is episode zero. Uh, I'm streaming. I'm live. Pods. We're supposed to be talking about Kamala Harris's blackness, and not just Trump's comments, but also the the narrative that was like online. Like, FBA folks were going ham about she's not black, she's not black, which opens up a conversation because even with recently, if you guys saw on Fresh and Fit, there was that woman who got into that fight, in the elevator with them two women, and all that stuff after like getting into like a verbal confrontation with Myron and being kicked off the show. And afterwards, so then she was like, yeah, and he called her a hard R. And there was just all this kind of stuff. And then the online narrative started talking about her blackness. I think she's not a descendant of American slavery, but either way, so then that became the conversation again. Like, is she black, et cetera, et cetera. And then of course, then people started like digging into her timeline on let me hear like her previous posts. She said a bunch of anti-black stuff about how she would never want to date black men. It was a bunch of nonsense. I can find it for y'all really quick. But then that brings to me the conversation about like blackness in general, because the online conversation is weird to me, about what is black. I understand like lineage and delineation, but this they're not black thing is just blowing my mind and in my opinion like retarded.
Mm-hmm.
So conversation needs to happen.
All right. Okay. Well, so just laying down some really quick, not really ground rules. We don't really feel the need for a moderator. We're all adults. We're all responsible. We're not going to sit here and yell over each other. Just let people finish. And if everybody wants to talk at once, I'll probably slow it down a bit and we can go like hand raise and kind of just like go one at a time, just so everybody gets a chance to talk. But we're just doing like whatever's necessary to have the good conversation. Doesn't have to be like a specific rule or, so just chime in if you think that's necessary. But going right into that first topic, we'll kind of go around, give yourself a brief introduction, and then give your opinions on what Fanatiq was just talking about, the perception of Kamala's blackness and, just kind of how you perceive that whole situation. Fanatiq, if you'd like to, you can take the time and do an introduction and stuff.
Well, I hate going first. I ain't gonna lie, cause
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm too opinionated. Somebody else go first. Somebody else, please.
Okay, no worries.
I don't mind kicking it off. So what's up? I'm GSU Gambit. I am a political commentator, no, but software engineer by night or by day, I guess. Yeah, so happy to be here. Happy to have this conversation. It's gonna be dope. For me, so I wasn't as aware of, is it Kamala or Kamala?
I
It's
don't
crazy.
care. We can say either, and I'm sick of people making that into a big deal, like as if that's like some
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
thing that we got to talk about. I can't bro. There was no substance in this conversation. But go ahead. I'm sorry. It's a trigger, nigga.
Yeah. It bothers me too when people do that. I'm just gonna say whichever one comes to mind. But I think the one that I say is wrong, and just to be aware. But so I think it's Kamala, because I would say Kamala naturally. It feels
Yep.
like so. Kamala. I wasn't hyper aware of her. Um, I did always have the idea that she could be black. I did see things about her being Indian more, it seems like, before I really got to know her. I was actually on a panel and I was like, well, she was always an Indian woman to me. And then like somebody provided me links and they showed me like, yeah, she was in the HBCU and this is what she said her background was, and like these are statements that she made before she became popular. So I think there's a lot of credence to the argument that she's considered herself black. for the majority of her life in some ways. So I kind of just had to accept it because I wasn't really aware and knowledgeable of her background, and they provided me some stuff that seemed to be substantial. So since that conversation, I've kind of considered her black. Um, Now there is some wild nonsense in the conspiratorial Candace Owens space of the internet, where she's looked into the person that she's called her grandmother, and she's like, this person might have really been the help, and they weren't actually her family. And apparently, there's somebody that she called her family before, maybe in a book, and that person was found out to not actually be like a part of her family, but a family friend. So it kind of engenders like maybe she's been lying about this, and like maybe her dad doesn't consider himself black. So I know that those topics exist in the ether. I don't put any stock in them until somebody just gives me something and says, "Hey, like, look, here's the evidence. You have to accept it, right?" But yeah. So my opinion on this, she's definitely black. But it's based off of just stuff that I've seen and statements that I've seen. But yeah, so I consider her black since that conversation. And yeah, I think some of the commentary around it, she's black. If she has repeatedly said she's black throughout her career, I think challenging her blackness is a bit wild, unless there's some kind of substantial claim to say the least. So I think the stuff that Donald Trump has did, it's possible that he was just like me and like he was ignorant of her. I don't give him the same credence because he's in this political arena, and I'm pretty sure he had access to statements that she made, just like I was made aware of on a panel. So yeah, I think it's kind of crazy that people have challenged her blackness. But if some of the things that Candace Owens said comes out to be substantiated, I don't know what we're gonna do there. It's a much different conversation.
I like it.
Yeah, I could agree with that. My name is Volsi. I go by Volsi Thoughts on YouTube and on TikTok. I do religious and political debates as well. For me, like it was kind of the reverse of GSU. I heard that she was black first before I heard she was part Indian. I didn't hear she was Indian until someone pointed out that her dad actually married an Indian woman, because to me she came off black presenting, just one of those good hair, what we call good hair type of black people. So I think, okay, she's probably mixed with something, probably a grandmother or whatever. You know what I mean? So I thought she was black presenting. Now, the name Kamala or Kamala, I'm not sure how you say it. No offense to anybody, but Kamala, her that name always seemed as like, is that a black sounding name or something else? Yeah, I mean, so that I was always a little confused there. But other than that, she always came off as black presenting. I didn't find that she was part Indian until later. And when her blackness got called into question, it was always strange to me, because like her blackness in the areas that I've seen, as Fanatiq said earlier, was more in the FBA arena, saying that if you're not from a descendant of the United States chattel slavery, then you shouldn't be considered part of that black realm. You should be considered melanated. But I always thought that was just like an online thing. Yeah, I mean, I did started seeing it offline, which kind of surprised me when I started seeing it offline, and I'm like, are y'all really having that type of conversation? You know what I mean? Because I thought this was in the realm of online spaces. Now, offline, it wasn't people really going hard on it, but it was people actually questioning, what do we consider black now? You see what I'm saying? Like with me, I've always felt that black was, people who descended from the, sub-Saharan Africa. It was always, that sphere was always considered black, because that's what it was considered during colonialism, and even prior to that. That's what black was considered. A black person was considered that. You know what I mean? Now, I get that, race is a kind of a social construct, you know what I mean? But even if it is a social construct, there is like genetic and cultural things that come into play. You feel me? Like at the end of the day, yeah, we all bleed red. I'm not gonna deny that. Yeah, you feel me? But there are some genetic and cultural things that come into play with this. So it's not just it's not just skin deep. You know what I mean? There are other things. So questioning her blackness, just as GSU said, it always came off as wild to me. And as far as Candace Owens goes, like I think she really Candace and Donald Trump really emboldened conservative white people, who are either diet racist or completely full on racist, to completely deny her blackness. because they see not just Donald Trump saying it, but they see Candace Owens saying it. You know what I mean? Once it's said by a black person, then it's validated to everybody else. You see what I'm saying? And when I did host political debates, I've had at least several white people, besides conservative white people, I'll say, besides them saying that since I'm a Haitian, I eat cats, besides them saying that, they would, yeah, it got wild. My streams got wild. They got really wild. Besides them saying that, they would deny that she's black, and you know they'll bring up the same thing. Oh, the person she says her uncle is a family friend, not her uncle. But it's like you typically ask any person who grew up, you know, either middle class, not even just black folks. If you grew up like working class or middle class, and you ask them your mother's best friend's kids, who are they to you? Most of us are gonna say that's your cousin. Yeah, I mean, we always called our mothers and our fathers' best friends aunt or uncle. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's probably what the case was at this point. I was a family friend. Yeah, she's gonna call them uncle, and those kids are gonna be her cousins. I still got play cousins. Right. You know what I mean, so is like it, and it's not just a black thing. It's anyone who grew up working on middle class. We've all done that. You know, so it's like that always seems so strange to me, and I had to point that out to these people. Like, listen, I had to ask them that same question. Your mother's best friend, her kids, what are they to you? And they would confirm, oh, those are my cousins. Like, duh. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's your uncle, that's your aunt. You know, so it's like, it was really strange to me that they would always kind of bring that up and question her blackness. And I think it really emboldened a lot of bad actors and just straight up racist people who just, you know, don't like black people. And yeah, I'll land there.
So, all right. I'm in agreement with both of what you guys said. I feel like it was an intentional strategy. I think there was almost no way for people to justify voting for Trump. There was going to be so many things that people were going to be able to use to attack him. And I think he knew that the online space, like Twitter and all that stuff, which is Elon Musk territory, he has access to that information. And he knew that by questioning her blackness and saying now she's saying she's black when she had been saying she was black forever, that was going to be a problem. Now, there's no doubt about it that there were plenty of times where they would refer to her as the Indian American. Like, I remember there was a point where Biden had made that statement. She's the first Indian American woman elected to da-da-da-da.
Exactly.
I remember that. So it was like, all right, I hear that. Then, of course, there was also the conversations about you know, she was raised primarily by her Indian mother, so that was her culture, and like they were kind of like going into that. If you remember when she even first became vice president, she did like an episode of some show with Mindy Kaling where they went there and they just talked about Indian heritage and like what her Indian life, whatever, and veganism and all these things like that were like very Indian specific. And I felt like, okay, so she's clearly Indian as well. But then, you know, people started questioning the blackness. And I feel like what's happening here is something that we've kind of spoken about in other places about like what happens to mixed people, where some people will reject a side of them just because they want to claim it. Like if they want to claim the one side, they'll reject the other side. Or if they want to if they don't like the person or don't approve the person, then they will like reject the part that identified with them and label them as the other side. So I, in my own personal experience, had cousins who were very extremely light-skinned, and we would really chastise them. It was disgusting. We were kids, but we would chastise them because of how light-skinned they were, and like tell them like, no, you're black. You can't be white. You know, all those kinds of things. And getting older, I started realizing like how much we ostracized the white side of them. It's like, no, you have to deny that. One of the kids picked up his favorite Power Ranger was the Red Ranger. And I remember as a very little kid asking, who's your favorite Power Ranger? And his was the Red Ranger, which makes sense because the Red Ranger is the leader. You know what I mean? Like he was whatever. But for me, I'm dismissing it. Like, no, you can't like the Red Ranger. You got to like the Black Ranger. Like trying to force him into this blackness when it was like, I mean, he's a black person. Like, there's just no way around it. Even if he's like, again, super fair skin, dude has black features, black lips, black nose. You know, he has black features, but he also happens to have red hair and, you know, very pale skin and freckles, and like gray eyes. So, like, from those things I've learned, I see that playing out with Kamala, where we're right now at a place where people Indian people kind of like in the polls, like some of their voting was affected by that. They felt like she was leaning into her blackness. It was actually like found in exit polls. So that was a thing. And then black people were like, nah, she's Indian. So I think it's the mixed bag. Lastly, what I'll say is, a lot of people, someone even in the comments now said, Harris ain't black. It was on the YouTube. They said Harris ain't black. She's Jamaican. Which this is where that conversation goes. I've spoke a while now, so I'll let somebody else go. But yeah, I got some responses to that. How do y'all feel about that paradigm that she's not black, she's whatever, or like they would say, Volsi, you're not black, you're Haitian. Like what about that conversation? I also thought that was an online only thing. I haven't yet to encounter that in real life, but I know it's like a conversation now online, which is crazy. I thought it was crazy from the beginning.
I don't think most people have this conversation. I agree, and I think that it's tough because obviously, being a white person, I don't really look much into the dynamics of like having the black experience from like the inward side of it. You know, having the family, the social structure, all of that stuff. But one thing that I do look at and that I take the thing that I think I care the most about when I'm asking is someone black, like for me personally, is whether or not they're having a black experience. And for me, the way that I can see that is you're living a life where people are perceiving you as black. That to me is the most tangible thing that I can, and again, it's going to be different for everybody, but for me personally, that's the most tangible thing that I can hold on to is, okay, this person's having an experience where when they walk on the street, people are looking at them and saying that's a black person. And I think in that regard, obviously this is my opinion, but I would say that Kamala is a person that at a glance, most people would probably perceive as black and not question further, at least in America. That might be different for black people. So when it comes to that aspect of people questioning her blackness and such, I think there's kind of two arguments sort of there. The first one is like, is she having a black experience? And then that second one is kind of, is she ethnically black? Is she having that inward black experience where we're talking about the family and the social structure and all that other stuff? And I think both of those are very interesting. But I think that questioning it is, like I've heard a few people say here, it's a little strange because I don't understand what the implication is. Are we trying to say that she doesn't have a black experience? Are we trying to say that she's not ethnically black enough to understand black issues? Or are we saying the third thing, which is obviously what they're saying, which is that she's not black. She knows she's not black, but she's kind of pretending to be black to get those brownie points. I just think those are very strange questions to be asking, but not unlike the modern questions that are asked today, unfortunately.
Brownie points and N-word were both amazing words there.
Yeah, N-word was amazing. Yeah,
it was. He was dropping gems and didn't even notice.
Like, what was happening?
Dropping gems and didn't even notice.
Yeah, I think a lot of the conversation does stem from her like biraciality. And I was actually listening to and this is when all of the Drake stuff was happening, when the GOAT was debating this. Kendrick, we don't have to go into that. But no, I'm joking. I was just playing.
No way,
but there was a conversation that Umar Johnson was having that I think was resonating with a lot of people, and I think I disagree with it. But the conversation was over if someone is biracial, their commitment to blackness is important, and that kind of sort of teeters somewhat in whether or not he like considers them black, even though he says any union of a person and a black person is a black person. There was like some ambiguity in one of the statements that he made, and I do think a lot of people latched onto that. So what I think when I actually talk to people who say Kamala's not black, what I get out of them is they don't think she's committed to black people, which I'm like, well, you can be black and not be committed to black people. Like, look at Candace, right? So like I think that's a distinction that people don't want to make. They don't want to call her black because they don't think she's committed to us.
They would say
And
Candace
I
is
think
black
that's a
too.
slap. I don't know in what the specific people I argue with. I don't think they would make that claim, but I think they would definitely throw that by Rich because they also would say Drake is not black. So, but it's a whole different conversation. But but yeah, I'm kind of sort of like, yo, if you have a black mother, grandmother, whatever, like you're black, like I accept you into blackness or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah. For me, when like it's a yeah.
Well,
Okay.
you cut out a little bit.
Yeah, I did.
yeah,
I did cut out a little bit. For me, it's one of those things where, like, cause in the online conversation, like I said earlier, a lot of people consider the term black only for African Americans, like descendants of American slavery only, and everyone else is just their nationality, essentially. So like I understand that you have a racial background and you have an ethnic background. My racial background is I'm a black person, and my ethnic background is Haitian because that's where my parents are from. That's my ethnic background, and I understand that. And I think it's being conflated because in America, the ethnic background would then just be black. You know what I mean? But then I would point out something else. If an African American were to move to like France or something like that, your ethnic background would then be American. It wouldn't be black because blackness is considered something else over there. Like it's considered more towards the Africans. So it's one of those things that I've said and pointed out, and I've always said that I understand the entire like ethnic argument. The ethnic argument is that in America the ethnicity is black and the culture is black, and anything outside of that, like you're basically an extra, like you're a plus. You're a plus one in within the black sphere, and I understand that. But still, in as far as I can only speak to the history of what I've understood from my people, from Haitians, blackness was always a thing with us. Yeah, I mean, all the way back to the first constitution, all the way back to the revolution, blackness was always a thing. It was even in, I think, one of Toussaint's Dessalines, it was even in their last speech, one of their last speeches where my mother was used to recite it in French, and one of the last words were we're fighting for a nation of black people. That's literally what they said. You know what I mean? So when I hear, you're not black, you're Haitian, or I heard another person say, I'm not black, I'm Haitian, I'm like, do you understand the history of what our people did? They literally said that they were black people. So excluding that means that you're denying our entire history, or you're denying yourself. Because within Haitian culture, blackness and being Haitian is one and the same, unless you're a white Haitian. Then they will hyphenate you. Oh, you're a white Haitian. Yeah, I mean, but to me, I'm just Haitian because blackness and Haitian is the same thing. It's synonymous. You see what I'm saying? So it's like that conversation has always been strange to me. And when I started hearing it offline, I would point these things out to people, and I guess they will understand. Like I said, offline is not as contentious, not as toxic as we will see it online. Offline is more of a question, more of how do we determine this now, more of curiosity, more of trying to gain the knowledge. Online, especially in Twitter Spaces, Fanatiq knows, especially in Twitter, it's bad. It's just toxic, And I try to have intelligent conversations, but I think in a lot of this, people have been either hyped up, brainwashed, or just hurt by, hearing or seeing people who look like them demean them and exclude themselves from blackness. You know what I mean? And that's why I kind of try to give grace whenever I talk to these people until they try my face. And once you start trying me, once you start insulting me, then gloves is off. I'm not messing with you. But I try to give grace to people who seem upset or even saddened that that's happening, and try to have a good conversation with them. And I try to point out that there is ethnicity and then there is race, but for myself, my blackness has always been synonymous with my ethnicity as a Haitian. It's always been the same. So I've never seen the difference. And I know for a lot of people back in Haiti, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like my grandmother became a citizen in 2008, literally just to vote for Obama. And when I asked her, how come you decided to become a citizen now? And she said, black pour black. Black pour black means black for black. That's
Yeah.
that's what she understood. You know what I mean? So it's like a black person is trying to lead the country. Boom, I'm voting for that. That's it. She hasn't voted since. She hasn't voted since.
All right.
But she always said black for black. Yeah, you know what I mean? But it's always been one of those things. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go ahead and land here, but it's always been like a strange, kind of weird conversation to me, wild conversation, because I always thought that we were getting to the point of, especially within the diaspora, of us finally working together. You know what I mean? We've been watching TVs from shows from the UK, internet content from the UK, and we see that they're not that different from us. They talk about the same things that we talk about. There's gender wars happening over there too. You know what I mean? They talk about blackness the same way we do. Like, yeah, I know it's crazy. I know, Fanatiq, it's crazy. But like, they talk about the same thing we do. And then Afro beats was blowing up. We was all talking about, having a good time, going to Africa, stuff like that. Then all of a sudden, we don't get along anymore. We all hate each other. I think it's COINTELPRO, but that's just my conspiracy theory. I'll go ahead and let Fanatiq speak.
All right. So look, there's a few things. For one, I think I want to frame it so that we all can make sure that we're having the appropriate conversation so that so everyone else can keep up, right? So blackness in the United States, especially for like descendants of slavery, has always been two things. It's always been a race, and it's always been an ethnicity. Those are two distinct things. Race and ethnicity are not the same thing. You can have two different ethnicities living in the same country, right? You can have, like, for example, in Nigeria, I think you have like the Yoruba people and then you have the Igbo people, right? And they're both Nigerians, but they're two different cultures. So they're two different ethnicities, right? So you can have within the same continent, within the same country, you can have different ethnicities. For blackness, our ethnicity, black is a race, because obviously, within the racial paradigm, there was white people, black people, and then pretty much everybody else qualified as white if you go historically. But anyway, that blackness was like a very specific delineation of a racial category that also applied towards Jamaican and so on and so forth, right? From the race thing. But from an ethnical standpoint, when you start talking about blackness, I understand why people make the statement that so and so is not black, because they're not Black American. They're referring specifically to that ethnicity, not the race. And I think that overlap is why there's always confusion, because I'm willing to recognize Kamala as racially black, but she's not going to be ethnically Black American. And there are some situations where that distinction matters, and some distinctions where it doesn't. If a police officer is pulling us over, he's not waiting to figure out what my last name is, or let me hear your accent. They're not doing that, right? They're black is black in the initial encounter and things like that. But when it comes to job applications, there is going to be consideration, and there are actually studies that prove that there is like bias towards non-ethnic, non-ADOS, non-FBA, whatever phrase you want to use, non-people of the lineage. There's bias towards other black people who are not part of that lineage. So there are some differences. I remember in the past when I was on the Pan-Africanist movement, and we were arguing on somebody else's panel about should we be Pan-African, and I was saying, well, yeah, I think it would be beneficial if we have a circulating dollar within black folks the same way Hispanics do it. When you look at like Hispanic cultures, Salvadorians have not been big fans of Mexicans ever, right? Like, they're not the same. And Hondurans and Guatemalans and Nicaraguans and all these people, these are all distinct groups. When they come to the United States, you're just Latin, or to the even more racist folk, you're just Mexican. Right? So
yeah.
Same thing happens with Asians, where it's like, we call you an Asian American, right? A Korean and a Japanese people, they're not at all the same thing, and neither is a Chinese. Like, these are very, very distinct cultures. You look at an Indonesian and then compare them to a Chinese, we're not even talking about the same. Like, they're so wildly different. But when you come to the States, you can be a Vietnamese, you're Asian. That's it. And so now they have this collective. Now they do have their enclaves of like Little Korea and Little Japan, and Little Tokyo, as they call it, Chinatown. They have those things, but you'll find even within those things, within Chinatown, you'll find a lot of Koreans still there. You'll find a little Asian, a little just different Asian groups. Vietnamese people are going to be living within one of those enclaves. You don't have a little Vietnam, right? So the fact of the matter is that dollar circulation, that collective, does provide some sort of influence, political power, etc. So I like the idea of that. But once I learned of the antagonism towards Black Americans that's found in a lot of immigrant Black groups, then it started making me recognize, oh, this is why it doesn't work. So I'm holding that ill because Gambit was 100% staunchly opposed to it. I don't know if you remember these conversations.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, but he was staunchly opposed to it, and I was 100% like, it would be beneficial if we could all get on the same page. I still believe that it would be if we could all get past that bias and stuff, but the fact of the matter is, some of that bias is really, really there within those communities, so then it's like, okay, the Pan-African thing stops working when you have a common anti-Blackness, talking about Black Americanists, right, within those groups, then it's like, I can see now why there's this distinction, why it has to remain.
Gotcha. No, I really feel that when I was younger, I would hear that from older Haitians as well, of, you know, American, you know, the Americans are this, that, and the third. And then I would go to school and I'm like, there's nothing like what where are they getting this from? Like, I would really question, like, where are you getting this from? And now I understand where they got it from. It's like, you know, whatever America exports. You know, we still get a lot of American TV in Haiti. So it's like, you know, that's what is exported over there. And then, like, I would have to speak with them and be like, no, it's not that way. I said, just give it a few. You know what I mean? Give it a few years and you're going to learn. And my dad, at least, he learned very quickly when he got here, what he was watching on TV wasn't what it was. It wasn't true. You know what I mean? Because the first people who helped them were African Americans. That's the first people who he ran into. You know what I mean? Like, when my mother, she even told me the story of how she had to rush over here because, you know, during that time it was a bad time in Haiti, so she had to come over here through not well means. But when she got over here, the person who took her in, who hit her, found other Haitian people to help her out, was an African American woman. So when you get here, they learned. My parents were lucky enough to learn very, very quickly, but a lot of people didn't, because there's a lot more people there to help you, so you don't have to have that help from them. Yeah, I mean, so, like, I think that disconnect of seeing what's on TV, seeing what's exported through American media, then getting here, and then you're already within an enclave of your ethnicity. You may not interact with African Americans like that, so you don't know that it's not an excuse. Now, I'm not trying to excuse them, but like, they really don't know that what their perception is incorrect until they live here for a while, start interacting with African Americans, and then see, oh, this is what it is in America. You know what I mean? So me, on my part, whenever I know that a person is new here, like a Haitian is new here, I always let them know that, hey, what you saw on TV is not it. Like, these are gonna be your friends, not, you know, the other folks. Like, you have to be careful. Like, these might be your friends first, and, like, be careful out there, because, like, there's a system at play. So be careful of that system. You know what I mean? And don't think on TV, like, you know, the white people are good and the Black Americans are the lazy bad ones. You know what I mean? Anybody can be lazy or bad. That's not true. Just put into your mind that, you know, what you saw on TV is not 100% the truth, and 90% of it is completely made up. So, always judge people not by, you know, what you've seen on TV or their ethnic background. Judge them on how they treat you, you know. And they like, they have to learn that, unfortunately, because a lot of the media, that's what is exported. Now we have social media. Now we have a lot of young people who know better. But yeah, back in the 90s, there was a lot of you know, cultural, like, ignorance happening, and unfortunately it's still happening because of all the fights that we see online. Now it's still happening. I think everybody's talking past each other, but I do agree that Pan-Africanism would work out, and I'm still, you know, one of those Pan-African people that wants to be Pan-African for the entire diaspora while respecting our distinctive cultures. But I do understand why it cannot work now, especially since we don't have a good idea of what makes someone African. You know what I mean? In my opinion, everyone who's sub-Saharan, I consider African. But even, you know, above the Sahara, even though they don't, but everyone sub-Saharan that we consider the typical African, I consider African. But I understand why it's not worldwide like that yet, and people don't. We need to have a real good conversation on what exactly it means, what exactly Blackness means, and how exactly do we move this forward, and before we actually say everybody be Pan-African. So I understand that.
Yeah. I think I personally think that the way forward, the way to kind of start to create progress here and sort of bringing this back to the Kamala thing is that I think it's very, very easy, especially when times are hard. It's very easy to divide our problems together. But often the better thing to do is instead count together your problems and find your commonalities. It's going to get you a lot farther to have that empathetic side. And for me personally, looking at the situation where I've talked to a few Black people, and usually a common thing that I hear when I say, well, why do you care so much about the Black identity, is because there's still things to be done. There's still things that were done that need to be taken care of and need to be paid back or reparated or whatever you think needs to be done. But the reality is, if we just dissolve what is Black people, then all of those things just fall aside, and now they just all happen to people. And that's not really a fair way to look at a lot of the things that have been done over the last 40 years, especially not in America, 40, 60, 200, whatever you want to look at. I think that going forward, is Kamala Black? I think a more important question is Kamala able to understand these Black experiences? Is she able to associate with them? And more importantly, is she able to provide help, even if she isn't able to understand them? And I think it's such a shame for people who are in the middle and they're thinking, well, I don't want to vote for Kamala because she's giving herself this title and she might not be that thing. And that's very fair. But what's sad for me is that what ends up happening is you don't vote for that person. And what ends up coming instead is something far more dangerous and something far more on the attack for what the identity of a Black person might be than Kamala ever was, in my opinion, of course.
Yeah, I think the Pan-Africanist conversation has always been interesting. I do remember that exact panel, and I've always been against it because like people our age, like our age group, whenever I talk to them, so I don't know how young you all were when you had your first white friend, but you get a white friend and you learn from them that the elders in their community don't like Black people. The reason why I was like anti Pan African was every time I met other people that were Black that weren't ADOS or FBA or whatever word we want to use, I got that same vibe that like your parents don't like me. And that's why I never was able to just like connect really with Pan Africanism. I do think it would be beautiful if there was actually a coalition of Black people all around, like coming together and trying to make the Black experience for all of us better. So I love it in idea. I think in implementation, there's a lot of anti-Blackness or anti-ADOS that we need to get through. But yeah, that's all I'll say on that. But when it comes to Kamala, so I don't know how you all feel about this, but there's also like a conversation around representation in this. One thing that I really don't like, even though I agree that we're all Black, I don't think experiences, I don't think we get the same opportunities sometimes. And when I see things that are happening in like the movie industry or other places, like when I watch Black Panther, I don't know if I feel represented. And what I noticed is a lot of culture. Like there was a new Netflix, and they were like, "Yo, there's this new Netflix thing." And I was like, "Oh my god, it's gonna be Black people. It's gonna be great." And in some ways, I felt, "Oh, it's gonna be FBA people," but it was like like in the UK, and it was like Africans. So I do sometimes not feel represented somewhat when I see other parts of Blackness, even though I consider them Black. And I've noticed that a lot of the opportunity seems to not be given to FBA. So I think there is a specific disdain that industry holders have towards our identity where they'll represent Blackness in a positive light when it comes to other facets of Blackness and not do the same thing for FBA, which has always been kind of weird to me because a part of it is I understand the controllers of these markets aren't the non FBA Black people, right? It's usually white people or Jewish or some other race. So yeah, this always been a little bit concerning me. And like, just to finish, we were talking about, I can't remember if this was on Twitch or this was like a personal friend group, but we were talking about like America's first Black president. And I was like, a Obama's definitely like that. Like, what are we talking about? And they were like, yeah, but do you think we could ever have an FBA president? And I sometimes feel like we can't. And it's like you have Kamala here and you have Brock here, who I do feel represented by them for sure. But I don't know if we actually elect FBA person to these type of offices. So I think that nuance is incredible. But yeah.
Yeah, listen. So here's where I think, and I think this is actually accurate. Very, very frequently, when you find anti-blackness with black faces, they're not people of our lineage. Like, for example, Candace Owens, she's not of the lineage, right? And she's one of the most vocal anti-black people that you can come across, from her nonsense with George Floyd to all the other nonsense, right? Then you have obviously like Byron Donalds. When he talked about reparations, he very clearly said, "Oh, I would never even qualify for reparations because I'm an immigrant." Da, da, da. You know, so it's like, okay, so then that made sense. When you start looking at, I don't know, just Gothics. It's another like a YouTube, like, content creator. I feel like she's been very anti-black in a lot of her positions and always promoting about victim mentality. That she's also not of our lineage. Of course, you have like your Jesse Lee Petersons, who's of our lineage and just securing a bag and lying, right? And so it's not. I'm never going to make the statement that only people of our lineage, like, or all hateful people, and self-hating people are not of our lineage. But it is a very common thing. And that same thing you're talking about, where it's like, you meet people and you find out, oh, their parents really don't like us. I remember I went to one of my friend's house. He's an Asian person, Vietnamese, and we got to his house. He was going through some stuff. Either way, I'm helping him out. So I get there to his house, and his dad, he introduces his dad to me. Introduced me to his dad. I've known him forever through gaming and stuff. But anyway, so then I go in there and I'm playing the game, whatever. And his dad pulls him to the side and is like, "Hey, make sure he doesn't cause any trouble." And so then he came to me. He was like, "Wow, I didn't know my dad was. I guess he's kind of racist." And he's like, and I'm like, "Well, what happened?" And he's like, "He told me to make sure that you didn't cause any trouble." And I was like, "I'm the least trouble causing nigga you can meet." You know what I mean? I'm a very unassuming dude. I'm not a threatening guy. Like, they're just. But that's where his brain went, specifically because of my race. And so I know that anti-blackness is ever present within, Asian communities and stuff. So it's just when you start seeing that, yeah, you do start to encounter that. So that's where I feel like, yeah, there's this problem. Now, the anti-blackness with Kamala, would she be a good representation for us? I didn't feel particularly represented by her. And the reason why I didn't feel personally represented, and I understand people can feel it for different reasons. The reason why I didn't feel particularly represented by her is because I don't think she had a reasonable black agenda. I don't think that she truly had a plan for how to fix our issues. I think she had the standard Democrat, I'm just going to do like a, rising tide through some low income program and hope that more black people capitalize when they won't. And it's not going to actually fix the problem. And she just wanted to do what the bare minimum that could look like it was black presenting, but not. And this was evident by the fact that when you looked at her plan, when she finally, because she realized she was not, black men weren't necessarily feeling her to the same degree. What we ended up seeing was she was like, "Oh, here's my black agenda." But the things that she talked about in her agenda were not for black folks. For instance, She was like, "Oh, crypto. We're going to make sure that black men can secure their money through crypto." And it's like, wait, black men are not even like positively disproportionately represented within crypto. Like, that's not a thing that we're like overwhelmingly part of. In fact, we're underrepresented within the crypto sphere. So that was like that's not for us. Oh, I'm gonna do something for business loans so that black men can do whatever. And it's like, I like the idea of business loans, but I know that the majority of those business loans aren't going to go to us, because unless you do something to offset some of the barriers that are going to be needed in order to get those business loans, credit scores, erasure of debt, things like that. If you don't do those things, then or the ability to like have some sort of money to be able to put up so that you can show that you can actually pay off this business loan, we're not going to qualify. So then the majority of them are going to not go to us. PPP loans, the majority of them went to white people. We got like less than 3% of the PPP loans, even though we're like 13% of the population. So all of the stuff that she was saying had no specific black agenda. It wasn't going to offset our problems. It was going to make it worse. And so to me, I don't feel represented by her. I feel like she has been somewhat anti-black in several ways. So for me, I did not feel particularly represented by her, and I wasn't a big fan of her. I know how the threat that Donald Trump was but I wasn't a fan of Kamala. I just wanted the conversation to be more substance about what were her policy ideas. Was she somebody that was actually going to be beneficial for us individually, as opposed to her race? I thought that was or her ethnicity. I thought that was the stupidest non sequitur.
Yeah, when it comes to like representation, um, really, I think I'm one of the people that just hangs on to any positive representation of Black people, because anytime in the media that Haitians are represented is usually negative. It's usually in the form of either voodoo, chaos is happening, or we're just some gangster savage that likes to cut up people. You know what I'm saying? So representation of Black people, period, is something I kind of hang on to, because my people are almost never represented positively. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's just one of those things where like that's where I kind of get at with that. And when it comes to the disdain between or the animosity between like immigrant groups and Black Americans, a conversation that I've seen happening over across the pond in the UK is that the same thing is happening between the Black people who came during the Windrush generation and the Black people who came after that. The Windrush generation was after World War II, when the UK went down to the Caribbean, to their old colonies, especially Jamaica, Trinidad, or they went to like Sierra Leone, places like that, and they bought those Black people. They sent ships down there, bought those Black people back to help rebuild the UK, because UK got bombed by Germany. The people who were part of the Windrush generation, this was, remember, during the 1940s and 50s when the UK was rebuilding. So the 1940s, 50s UK was essentially Jim Crow South. You know what I mean? It was basically that. So the Black people who went through that, namely Jamaicans, they grew up during that era. And now, the new immigrants coming in, around this time, around the 80s and the 90s, in the 2000s, are usually the Africans, the Nigerian, Sierra Leone, places like that. They're coming in after. And this little this, not little, I'm not gonna say little, but the animosity situation that we're talking about, it's happening over there too with them, where they say, oh, the African parents will tell them, the Nigerian parents will tell them, don't hang out around with the Jamaicans. Yeah, you see what I mean? It's happening over there too. So that points out to me that it seems a lot more of a, just like how we said, an experience and a generational thing. The new Africans coming to the UK, they didn't experience what the Jamaicans did during the Windrush generation. They didn't experience that. So they're thinking that the UK is opportunity and the Jamaicans are just lazy. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of it has to do with experience, and once you hit the second or third generation, you may see the tone kind of change up. You know what I mean? But like, it was just always it kind of blew my mind that I'm seeing similar themes happening over there. You know what I mean? If we're gonna bring it back to Kamala as far as what she represented, I did see the policies that she came up with. Now the crypto thing I thought was okay. That's pretty silly. That's pretty silly. But I did like the focus on like health with prostate cancer, because Black men are affected by that. So I did like that policy, and the business policy. Just like how Fanatiq pointed out, even though that can help a little bit, you have to address the systemic barriers. You know what I mean? So I would have loved to see more, even though I'm like, okay, this is an okay first step, but we need to address the school to prison pipeline, which she kind of contributed to. Not even kind of. Like, the Fanatiq could say more about that, because he was in California. She contributed to. So we need to address the school to prison pipeline. We need to address economic barriers within the businesses, just like how he said. I've never seen a Democrat actually say abolish credit. Credit was invented in 1989. We really don't need it, yo. It was invented when I was 2 years old. Like, that's insane. We don't really need it, and we know that credit was a system implemented by like 1950 standards. We know credit is racist. Like, there's no doubt about it. We know credit is racist. So if we're gonna keep credit, we can at least reform it, reset it, update the algorithm to reflect current trends, because black people for no reason are usually given low credit for like no reason at all. You see what I mean? Like, it happens. It's a thing that really actually happens. So we can actually reform the credit system, or if it's an entirely racist system, let's go ahead and abolish it. That needs to be addressed. I don't think any Democrat has addressed that before. But I understand why people didn't feel represented by Kamala, because what she's presented, even though it could advantage us, it doesn't actually address the systemic barriers. It doesn't actually address things that we can go through. It doesn't actually address things that she contributed to. You know what I mean? Now, if in my opinion, if she had put something in there about we need to address the school to prison pipeline, and in my time as DA, I contributed to this problem, so now I want to fix it, I think she would have gotten way more respect and way more people to vote for her at that point. You know what I mean? Because I don't know what it is with Democrats, but they do not want to admit when they made a mistake in the past. Like, for some reason, for some odd reason, they do not want to admit it. Just admit it that you made a mistake, and this is what you're planning to move on from it. You know what I mean? Most people at that point will respect you. So like I said, like I do get why she didn't feel people didn't feel that she represented them. I do think some of her policies were good first steps. I did like the child tax credit and everything like that. Good first steps, but you need to address the systemic barriers, and they just tap dance around that, and it's tiring, and it's why we see people shifting right now. Like as a progressive, as a leftist person, I want to see them actually address systemic issues, and I'm always disappointed that they don't. I'm never surprised, but I'm always disappointed. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I'll say on the reparations conversation, I didn't comment on that. I do find that when I see black people against reparations and I look into it, most of the time they're not FBA when I look into it. And that's another thing that like adds to the Pan-Africanism thing that like kind of sort of rubs me the wrong way. About the Kamala policies, like, yeah, the fact that she even presented, hey, I'm finally going to have an agenda for y'all, and it contained cryptocurrency, like that shows me her distance away from at least FBA, if not blackness in total, at least definitely FBA. So that was like wild. And I think it might have been first in the list. I can't remember. But it was like, I was like, yo, what team assembled that this is going to be your attack for people saying that you're not for black people? So that was crazy. And what was I about to go with this? Damn, there was a point I wanted to make. No, I think that one thing I've noticed is what you were just pointing out is that like there doesn't seem to be like a will to address deep systemic problems. And this is again where I think wanting FBA or ADOS or whatever word representation, people would push for those policies. I was going to ask y'all, that was a clip, and I have heard that this is out of context, and maybe y'all are more aware of this than I am. So I just want to understand the background. There was a clip there where she said, I'll definitely never do something specifically or only to affect black people. And I haven't looked into that more because I was like, well, I felt she would say a statement like this. Is that put out of context, or was she really saying, I'm not going to do something specifically for black people? It has to be like a rising tides type thing. Do y'all have any context on that clip?
There's a charitable way to look at it and an uncharitable way to look at it. I choose to look at it uncharitably because I think she's a disingenuous person. But the context was someone asked her directly, do you support reparations for black Americans? She then takes the time, and this is why I say it's intentional and why I think I have the right to be uncharitable. In response to that, she says, listen, we have, and she just rattles off all of the history, X amount of years of Jim Crow. We had slavery. We had then we have the new Jim Crow that's still happening. Then we have current systemic barrier. So she lists everything that would justify reparations. And then she says, so we do need to do something to offset these things, which is why I'm recommending the LIFT Act, which is, that's one of those rising tides type of situations where it's like, so then, and so she's like, so that we can give these families who are who are more likely to be found in disproportionately, lower income and whatever status, then we can lift them up so that those families can whatever. And so then the person thankfully re-asks, so you don't support, to be clear, you don't support reparations for black Americans, specifically for black Americans. And then she says, well, when we talk about, I mean, but we're doing it through our policy. When we target these demographics disproportionately, that's how we do it. So then she says, but I mean, but when you help that family, then whatever you do for that family also helps the community at large, which is true. If they were to actually, do reparations and like fix black debt, it would actually contribute so insanely to our GDP, because debt costs the country trillions of dollars a year, trillions. So it's crazy. Poverty costs the country trillions of dollars. We would actually be saving a lot. So. So she mentions that, and then she says, but I'm not going to sit up here and say that I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, given the fact that you understood the things that were very specifically, directly targeted at us, to then say, I'm not going to do something that's only going to benefit them, when already the thing that would benefit them would be something that would benefit everybody. So reparations would benefit everyone. To not answer that question directly 2 times lets me know that you don't support it, and that you meant it. But then, when we came later on to different things, there was something for Native Americans, and she was like, I support this, and it was something that only would benefit Native Americans. She could do something specifically for Native Americans, but not something specifically for us. There were things that were only going to benefit Latinos, things that were only going to benefit Asians. Each of those things she was willing to do, but anything that was exclusively and specifically going to benefit us, she said she's not going to do. So you can do things specific for specific groups. You just refuse to do it for us. You don't represent me. She didn't earn my vote. Trump earned my vote against him, but she didn't earn my vote because she was not going to do what's good for us.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, that's always that's the context, and that right there was always my issue with her, and was because even as a person that I support reparations, right? Even as a person that I know that reparations will happen tomorrow, I'm not going to see a cent of it. Yeah, I mean, but I do know that this is just the right thing to do, and that's always been my argument, and that's always been one of my arguments in favor. Of course, with everything that Fanatiq pointed out, the years, how much it would save the country. My thing always came down to is just the right thing to do. Anytime the government has damaged a community, they repaired that community. They repaired them. But when it comes to black people, for some reason, it's a problem. Like, I've never really understood that. I've actually have argued in favor for reparations in some of my streams. I've met probably 1 or 2 black Americans who were against it, and they were always against it on the grounds of, how can we do it? Who do we consider black? I'm like, bro, we have the immigration records. My dad came over here in 1977. I ain't getting it. It's that simple, bro. Like, I don't see what the problem is. Is you know what I mean? And it's always wild to me that whenever I meet a person who's against reparations, now usually it's a person that either doesn't understand the issue, is non-FBA, like how you guys pointed out. But if they are, it's like, bro, did you talk to your grandma yet? Because it's like, how can you? Like, am I in the Twilight Zone? How am I supporting it and you don't? Like, what's happening here? You know what I mean? Just like how you pointed out, like, if you can do specific things, we already have precedent for it. There's been specific policies for the Japanese. The Japanese got reparations. There's already been specific policies for it. And if you're gonna, like, if we're being charitable to Kamala, did she mean to say that I can't do a policy that's only specifically for black people and that's it? I can only be the president for black people. Of course she can't. She's the president of the United States. Of course she's not the president of only black people and all policies are only going to benefit black people. If we're being charitable, that's the most charitable that we can give her. Other than that, you were just saying that you don't support reparations. You know what I mean? That's all you were saying, and I can't rock with you because of that. And it's the thing, like how Fanatiq said, like, you only earn me to vote against someone that I think is going to be worse for us. You didn't really earn me voting for you, and that's a losing strategy every single time. You know what I mean? Besides you being black, besides you being a woman, we kind of know how America is with women leading. You know what I mean? Besides that, you didn't really earn the vote of a lot of people, and they didn't want to vote for Trump. So guess what? Turnout in Georgia and North Carolina and Michigan for black folks, it wasn't 2020 levels, it was 2016 levels, because you didn't inspire those folks. They didn't come out to vote for you because, again, for some reason, I'm sorry, I've been talking for a while, but for some reason, like, Democrats do not want to address the systemic issues. And I do think, just like how you two pointed out, it's because for some reason addressing systemic issues for African Americans is toxic for some reason. It's basically political suicide. They know if they do that, they're going to have to admit that America is systemically racist. They can do that for the Native Americans because it's obvious what they do with Native Americans. It's very, very obvious. They live on reservations, third world conditions, extremely obvious. Latin people, a lot of Latino people have assimilated into whiteness. You know what I mean? Especially down here in Florida. They've assimilated into whiteness. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's kind of easy to talk about them as being the working class. We know what they mean when they say the working class. You know what I mean? But when it comes to black people, like America has always kind of operated on not only benign neglect, but what's not benign neglect, but also deniability, plausible deniability. They've always worked on that. You know what I mean? That's what the Southern strategy is. Plausible deniability. If you're talking about tax cuts, we know we're talking about tax cuts are going to hurt black people more than they're going to hurt everybody else. But it's a tax cut. It's not racist. It's only a tax cut. It's forced busing. You know what I mean? That's the type of things. Plausible deniability. That's what Trump operated on. Plausible deniability. You know what I mean? And Democrats was just, they just never got through to it. Since, I would say, probably Clinton, or even before that, probably since Reagan, they've operated on plausible deniability to not address the issues, because they know if they specifically address the issues, you have to admit that America is a systemically racist country. And that could lose you votes. Not only that's definitely going to use you votes against who? The main demographic that votes, which is white folks, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm gonna not really play the heel a little bit here, but I think I'm gonna go off of what you're saying and kind of give at least my perspective on that. I agree that it is political suicide to support any black agenda even in 2024. And Kamala's numbers clearly show that. Not saying that she was the outstanding, person who the black agenda needed. I understand everything that's being said, and it sounds like she's made some pretty sketchy comments in the past. And I think it sucks in two ways. The first way is that, we as the left right now are taking the moral high ground in the political market. I don't know if I would characterize you folks as on the left, but on my personal side, I'm on the left. I'm a traditional liberal. And right now, the liberal and left side of things is supposed to be taking this like sort of moral high ground. We're not going to stoop to that level that the Republicans stoop to. And to me, the way that the left has gone about this strategy, not the left, but rather the Democrats, the way they've gone about this strategy is, let's always do things that are politically acceptable to everyone. We're going to work with Republicans to make deals. We're going to work with Republicans to reach across. And, maybe they're doing it because they think it's the best strategy. Maybe they're doing it because if you just go by a raw numbers basis, there are way more just people on the right than there are people on the left scattered in their separate little rural areas. There could be a lot of reasons for it, but it sucks because we take this strategy on the left, but we also have this moral high ground. The right doesn't make these decisions like we do. Oh, I'm not going to vote for Trump because he clearly doesn't represent my issues fully. The right doesn't give a shit about that. They're looking at it and saying, well, if I vote for this person, we're going to win. And if we win, we get what we want. We're taking that moral high ground and we're looking at it at that additional level. And while I think it's the right thing to do, it's clearly, as we're seeing here, it's not a winning strategy. Kamala was milquetoast at best with everything that she ran with. And the turnout just shows that nobody gives a crap about that anymore. I think this kind of transitions into our next topic, which is sort of why Trump lost and what can be done about it, and how we can, if it's possible, to reach across the aisle to these people. And I do think it's possible to reach across the aisle, but I think we need to stop making these silly deals and stop going in the middle and stop taking this middle ground stance, and rather, like is being said in this panel here today, we need to be more firm and actually stand up for the things that we want and be a little bit more ride or die about them. I think it can go a long way for the Democrats, and it can show that, hey, these aren't just some lazy people who are trying to do the absolute minimum necessary. They don't actually care about the black agenda. I think if someone actually stands up for it, it's either going to be political, it's going to be quite popular. But this sort of half-assing where you kind of say you care about the issue and you just want to do the same things that have kind of been done over the last 20 years. It's not working. And the right's doing nothing. So really, there's just nobody to vote for right now. It's and Fanatiq said I voted against. I didn't vote for Kamala. I voted against Trump. Well, I think we can all understand why that's happening. I guess the question I want to pose to everybody is, what do we do about it? Because there's a lot of animosity and a lot of vitriol, and it's all very well placed. There's a lot of negativity that's been happening on the Democrats, or even if not the Democrats, just those who don't want the Trump agenda. How do we go forward, and how do we reach across? I guess is going to be my question. Anybody who wants to start?
Yeah, so I think y'all are going to disagree with me the most on this. I didn't vote. I could never vote for a Republican. That's just crazy. Like the president, at least. So I didn't vote for Trump, and I didn't vote for Kamala. I voted for Cornel West, even though I hated his platform. But I just couldn't vote for either of those two, and I think that's super unpopular. So just putting that out there. But the reason why I didn't is, Paz, what you were talking about is how Democrats seem to say we're going to work across the aisle and we're going to do what's the easiest to pass based off like cultural agenda. The thing that I would posit to you is that only exists for Black issues. Most of this country is rampantly anti-trans. Most of this country, a lot of Republicans are like, they don't even believe in gay marriage, right? It was just crazy. And we see Democrats stick their necks out politically for those issues, but they don't do it for issues related to FBA people. Until that changes, I'll likely never vote Democrat in my life. I know there's an argument of lesser of two evils, and I know that Trump may be worse in a lot of ways than Democrats, but I can't force myself to work with people who are attempting to work against me. And I know that's like deeply unpopular, but until I see actual real will from Democrats to help FBA or even more globally Black, I just can't support it at all, like in any way. But
so,
yeah.
As a quick follow-up, for people who are in your shoes, for people who are in that position, they're feeling the way you're feeling. What do you think is the step forward? Is it, or rather, what do you think is the step forward? How do you think we start to work towards some progress? With that mindset.
Good question. Yeah, I think we have to. I don't know how we do this, but we have to get people politically interested before the final elections. People have to be more interested in primaries. People have to be more interested in local offices and those things. So I think that's the only path politically. But when it comes to non-political, I think that we have to be advocates within our community in trying to fix things outside of the political system as well. I think me and Fanatiq had a conversation about this in the past. I'm a little bit doomer about the political, like the ability to revamp our political system. I always believe in voting for anybody that I'm like energized by. So I think that's a important spectrum and an important way to advocate for Black people. But I'm much more. I can at least see the real gains when I'm doing things in a community and I can actually reach out and touch people and talk to them. So I think both are extremely important. But yeah, that's kind of what I think the best path forward is: being more active locally and then being more active earlier in the primary process to actually try and dictate the candidates that are chosen.
Okay, well, listen. Since we're making confessions, I'm gonna go on and confess it too. I ain't vote for Kamala. Um, so I'm in the state of California, and I look at it as there's 0% chance I could ever vote for Trump. If I'm like interested in progress for my folks, there's just no way I could ever do that. But I didn't want to vote for Kamala because she's freaking Kamala Harris, and I thought she was terrible, and I thought she wasn't actually going to do anything for us per se, and because I have the luxury of being in California. My electors were absolutely going towards Kamala Harris.
For sure.
So I didn't have to worry about it. That's why I didn't waste my time. But if I was in a swing state or somewhere where it kind of mattered, I would have I think I might have ended up doing it. Maybe. But I don't know. It would be hard. I was literally terrified of Trump getting a second term after his first bid. So in the
Yeah.
2020 election, I remember there was all that talk about civil war and the way everything was starting to go. I remember doing gun drills legitimately, practicing loading and unloading a gun, like all of that, like being prepared because I live in Whitesville. You know what I mean? Like it's Caucasians around me. Trump flags, they have them. You know what I mean? And Blue Lives Matter flags, and you know what I'm saying, they've had them the entire year, and they've had them. So I live where my region where I live is Republican actually, even though I'm in California. So I remember being truly terrified, but even still, I couldn't get myself to vote for Joe Biden. I couldn't because that
Yeah.
nigga did that crime bill, and when they asked him about it, he wouldn't walk it back. Which is to Volsey's point, them niggas refused to be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, that was a misstep. I'm sorry. That was my bad. Nah, he's just like, yeah, I mean, it was really wanted, just lying. So ultimately, I couldn't bring myself to vote for her. What I think they can do to gain my vote is they need to start at the state level and at the local level doing things that very, very clearly demonstrate and signal that they actually have our best interest. What I believe, I'm saying it now, Gavin Newsom is going to probably run for president in 2028. I think he's going
He's
to
gonna
run,
lose.
he's going to run for president, and he's going to be trying his best to pander towards us, towards our lineage, and telling us what he's going to do for us and so on and so forth. After he sank that reparations bill at the state level in California, I ain't gonna forget. So now that I know that this is what he's going to do, I'm already prepared right now, and I'm very happy because you won't have the Trump to try to bully us into like supporting them, because I think this entire time Trump has been the ultimate like bully because he's so terrible, so scary that it's like, man, I'm almost at a point where I'm starting to want to advocate for Kamala. I never could give just like a full throated like, yo, nah, she's it. I could never do that, but I definitely could give the yo, Trump is bad enough that I can see us wanting to vote against him. You're not gonna have Trump next year. What the freak are you gonna do to get my vote? You better show me at the state level. You better show me at the local level. It better be in your policy positions from the very beginning. Make sure that it's crystal clear. Then you can get my vote. But until then, nah. Benign neglect has been like the banner of the Democrat Party, so I can't support them niggas. Never have, never will.
Okay. Quick follow-up question. What do you
Hold on. I think Volsey wanted to jump in on it.
No, if you have a follow up question, go ahead, go first.
well, it's just kind of the original second question, which is what do you think we should do? Like what's kind of the plan going forward next 4 years now?
I think next 4 years is, I think, for Democrats to start being like legitimately honest about like their part in our destruction. That crime bill was absolutely heinous. We need to start talking about like the neglect of Barack Obama, because that was the first black president, right? That's what they were saying. And I know that he's, whatever. So when that dude got in office and there were things like, I don't know, police shootings, and he talking about, I can't talk about it because there's a pending case. There is no law, no president that says that a president can't do that. You just chose to ignore the issue because you wanted to be that milquetoast nigga that you thought you could play to the other side and win people from the other side. You had super power in the very beginning. You had the House, the Senate, you had the presidency, all of it, right? You could have passed whatever the freak you wanted to, and instead you did nothing with that 2 years, nothing for us, and you can't show me anything that he did for us during his entire presidency. The racial wealth gap continued to increase during his presidency. That nigga failed us. The housing crisis disproportionately harmed black people, and he bailed out the banks without actually doing the things to rectify the damage done to the actual constituents, which are us, right? So the fact of the matter is, that dude didn't do nothing for us, and so since him, they've got to recognize and admit that that's it. And then to add insult to injury, that nigga had the audacity to tongue lash black people and label us as misogynistic because we weren't voting for Kamala Harris. They have to actually start addressing our issues. Reparations needs to be within their platform. We need to start having these conversations. It needs to enter the Overton window, and the only way we do that is when the Democrats actually get behind it and start being reasonable about it, because we can have these conversations with these idiot Republicans who don't know any better. We can actually educate them on the damages that have been done and the viability of reparations. But we can't do that and when we know both parties are both against it and not really willing to fight it. So Democrats, that's what they need to do. Actually come with a reasonable, realistic black agenda. Actually start addressing the issues that have actually plagued us, and then at that point, then they can get my support.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If I hear across the country Democrats for the House and Senate are putting reparations as a part of their platform, as well as whoever is running for president, that would move me. But almost anything short of that may not. Like I'm that done with it because like y'all said, all y'all said benign neglect. You can just see it and like it's so evident, and to not address it means that you're not for me. Like there is no way you can claim to be for me and
Yeah.
continue the history of how this has played out. So yeah.
Definitely. Volchi, what was your answer to that? And again, the question was, why why did Kamala lose? What do we do next 4 years?
Gotcha. Yeah, my vote for Kamala was a vote against Trump. That's just it. Yeah, I mean, just on the grounds that, especially of what he said about my people, there was no way that I could support a man who said that. There's no way I could support someone who says they want to defund schools that teach about slavery. No way I can support a person that wants to bring back stop and frisk. There's absolutely no way. Yeah, I mean, so like that's all it was. And I know only two people could win. And I'm in Florida, so I basically knew this was going to Trump. But Florida is a perfect example of what frustrates me about Democrats so much. Obama won this state twice, and they just gave it up. And the reason they gave it up is because they felt that Florida was safe. Hispanics were always going to be on their side because all they got to do is talk about immigration and racism. What Democrats forgot is that there's something called shifting demographics. A lot of younger and more educated Hispanics are not going to see themselves as just Hispanic anymore. They're going to see themselves as more assimilated into the American culture. They're going to put the Americanness first before the Hispanicness. And just because they were born here and they were raised here, they see themselves as American. They don't see themselves as immigrants anymore. So they're going to be concerned when people talk about border issues and immigration. They're thinking that, okay, they're going to view the GOP as racist. Which we all know that the euphemism for border security is we don't want no Hispanics here. We know that's a euphemism, but they're not going to take it that way. Yeah, you see what I mean? So it's like when it comes to benign neglect, Florida is a perfect example of that. They literally stopped funding the Democratic Party here in Florida. They didn't send any Spanish speakers here. They didn't go to any voting drives down here. And then for the past 12 years, it's been a solid red state. Miami-Dade County used to be a solid blue county up until Trump. It used to be a solid blue county up until Trump. The past 3 elections has been a solid red county for Trump. Solid red. Yeah, I mean, and we have a huge LGBTQ population in Miami. Huge. Solid red county for Trump. Yeah, I mean, so it's one of those like how we said before, benign neglect. Kamala Harris lost again because even though I felt that there was there were good policies there, what we need to understand is that when it comes to things like inflation, they're always going to blame the current person in power. They're not going to blame the previous person in power. So even if we can say that, hey, this inflation happened because of tariffs, because of these tax cuts, because of the et cetera, inflation is happening under you, and you kept those tariffs. Yeah, I mean, so like you need to address your missteps, which they never fucking do, which again is frustrating. They never do, never address their missteps, never actually speaks to people actual conditions. When people like the tax credit is great, wages are what people are worried about because the tax credit comes all the way next year. Right now, I can't pay my rent. And we know that rent is going up across the country for absolutely no reason at all. We know that this rent is increasing because the companies are taking advantage of poor people and are hoarding houses due to speculation. What are you going to do about that? People can't afford their health care bills. What are you going to do about again, right? Okay. Like, what are you actually going to do about people's actual materials conditions? She is like, I think at the end of the day, she just didn't address that. I mean, she just didn't address that. I think the Israel-Gaza issue also lost her votes because the folks up in Michigan didn't vote for her anymore. Even though she said that she's calling for a ceasefire, she did that way too late. Her entire administration was supporting Israel, so of course that's going to lose her votes. If Democrats, what we do about those are basically all the reasons why she lost. On top of the misogyny and racism, we know that's going to be a problem anyway. So That's not even a question. Why did she lose with the people that she needed to win with? Israel, Gaza, not addressing our issues, just like how everybody said. What Democrats need to do, and what I've always said, this needs to be twofold. This needs to be grassroots, and this needs to be on party level. On the grassroots level, if we're not going to bring back the Black Party, the Black Panther Party of self-defense, if that's not something that can happen, something similar needs to happen. You see what I'm saying? Because the Democrats needs to start working with the grassroots again, because they are far disconnected. Like I know like a certain state representative when I used to live in South Florida. She was my representative. I canvassed for her. I'm the one who went out and got votes for her. When I spoke to her about what's happening in the grassroots, she had no idea. So even at that level, a state representative had no idea what was going on in the grassroots, what the grassroots was talking about. When I go to the barbershop, what the men there talk about. You know what I mean? Like, she had no clue. So it's a disconnect even from the party and the grassroots level. There needs to be a communication again between the grassroots level and the party level, in order for people to know what their material conditions are. I've never been the type of person that believe that if we address working class issues, white working class issues, we have to forget about Black issues. We have to forget about trans rights. We have to forget about reproductive rights. We can walk and chew gum. We can say that, hey, the working class is suffering. They don't have good healthcare plans. They don't have good wages. And also, hey, we need to go ahead and reform police. We need to go ahead and protect reproductive rights. We need to go ahead and get help for trans people and trans youth to get their actual health care in order, their mental health care or whatever gender affirming care is. You know what I mean? We need to understand what exactly is gender affirming care, because I don't think they even understand that. I barely understand it, so I know they don't. You know what I mean? So it's like these are all things that are part of their party, they're part of their constituents, that they kind of just don't address, take it by the hand, or the GOP is going to take away reproductive rights. All right, so what the hell are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? Do you have a plan to actually do you want, if you can't bring back Roe v. Wade, do you have a plan to actually have more access to birth control and contraceptives? Do you have a plan to have complex sexual education? Because that can lower the abortion rate as well. Do you actually have a plan to address the school to prison pipeline that affects many Black boys? Do you actually have a plan to address the systemic barriers of Black men getting into work, of Black businesses not getting the loans, of the racist history of credit? Is any of this part of the plan? This needs to be addressed. And finally, reparations. Is that going to be part of your platform or not? Because we can't keep tap dancing around it. Y'all know all the issues. You know this is the right thing to do, but you don't want to do it. And we just need to put your foot to the fire and ask you, why do you not want to pass this? Why do you? It's enough with the studies. We have years of studies already. You can go to a regular local college student at Howard, and they can write you a 30-page study for their school project, and you can present that as a study. We know what the problem is, y'all. We don't need a bill to study it. The only bill that we need to study it is to see how it can be implemented. Is it going to be cash? Is it going to be a certain type of like a tax rebate? What is it actually going to be? But we don't need a study to see if it actually is going to happen. It needs to happen. It needs to be part of your platform. These are the things that they need to do, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go quickly. I think that Kamala lost because of one reason, is cultural elitism. I think that the elitism of the left is just gotten completely out of control. I think Kamala's entire platform was, I'm better than this guy. We don't even need to entertain it. We got this. And I think that is such a multifaceted problem that can't really be put to words in a few minutes. But I think what it does more than anything is it creates this sense for the other side that we're both just going to build up our towers and we're just going to chill in our towers and vote for our guy. And we as the left have to remember that we will never win another election on that strategy, ever. If you want to go by raw people, we lose. That's it. The only way we're ever going to win is with strategy. The right is the side that doesn't do the strategy. They're the side that blindly picks a person and supports them in and out, up or down, no matter what. Let's not forget that this is the same party who elected Bush. We We went to Afghanistan. We went to Iraq and Iran. We did the most outrageous things that you could ever imagine a first world nuclear country would ever do. And we did it because you vote for your guy, we'll vote for our guy. So I think what we need to do is we need to understand why we won in 2020, because everyone was out there constantly attacking these ideas, constantly coming at these ideas with, no, that's not true. Look at the science, look at the facts, whether it was COVID, whether it was immigration, whether it was the George Floyd issue. We were out there fighting that fight. And that's why I think we won in 2020 by a landslide. And I think if we want to win again in 2028, not win being the Democrats, but win being someone who actually cares, we have to get out there and we have to be fighting these fights. We have to show these states and these senators and these electoral people, we have to show them that these are the things we're talking about. These are the things we care about. These are the things that we're fighting for. I've seen a lot of people say, well, now Trump has won, so like, let's just get ready to leave the country. No, now is the time to fight. Now is the time to get out there and fight that fight. We haven't lost everything yet. We very well can, but the only way now to get back from it is to fight. We spent 2024 saying we don't need to fight. This is an easy battle. Trump is obviously going to lose. And look where that got us. So how do we go forward? Communication with everyone, with your friends, with your family. It needs to stop being a taboo issue. It needs to stop being, oh, we don't talk about politics at the family table. We need to start talking about it. We need to start having a real conversation. All these other developed countries in the world have gotten this message. China, Japan, everyone, they've all learned, and we are very, very much behind. And that is why people like this can just come through and cut our country in two. These kind of things don't happen in other countries, and it's because of these cults of personalities, and it's because of the left's cultural elitism. We don't want to go on Joe Rogan. We don't want to have the podcast. We're too good for that. Stop. Yeah. We need to start being the party that actually talks to the people that we represent better than the right ever has. It's very frustrating, but to me, it's a very fixable issue. But it has to be us. It has to be individuals. You can't rely on your senator to do it for you. It has to be you. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So the cultural elitism, I think for sure that's one of the biggest reasons she lost. Like you said, not going, like telling Joe Rogan, hey, yo, come meet me for an hour is bananas. And I think like the one thing that I did respect about Trump, even though I hate him, is he seemed to be every fucking way. Like every platform. Every day I was talking to YouTube and there was like a new 2-hour interview and like a 1 hour and a half interview.
That garbage truck, I knew it was over, man. When he bought that garbage truck, because he had a comedian who said that, we all know about the comedian who said that sketchy thing. Well, Kamala, it was either Kamala or Joe Biden, he called them garbage, referring to that comedian. Well, Trump took it as, you're calling our party garbage. He rented a garbage truck for his next speech. This is someone who's, it's funny, it's a meme, but he knows that that's real. Memes are real. Go online, go on the internet. It's a real thing. We can pretend it's all fun and games and it doesn't affect politics, but the memeiest guy of all time just won again.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think understanding how how people digest news has changed and honoring that. Like she went on like all the smoke, but she didn't like. I wanted her to go somewhere that was like that. She did a Fox News interview. I can't remember the name, Brett something, and like it was kind of sort of like, this guy is definitely against her. So it was, to me, it was a good thing because they were gonna press her on things. She's trying to do her little talking point thing, and he was trying to get through it. But I needed her to do more stuff like that because there was a lot of statements that she said in the past. And then when they literally would put her words into an ad, she would say it's disinformation. And it's like, wait, you're saying that your words are disinformation, and you're not even clarifying what your new position is. You're just saying, oh, that was 5 years ago. That's not me anymore. Well, who are you now? Right? So I feel like her doing like that Joe Rogan podcast, the 3-hour podcast, people would have got to know her. He would have asked her about some of the more hard-hitting things, and she would have been able to elucidate. And I think he would have gave her a space to do that. And I think not taking that challenge is just another like point towards the elitism that they have for sure. Like, insane.
I agree.
I could agree.
I really quickly want to say that someone pointed out in the chat, I agree 1,000%. Trump will run again in 2028. Anybody who thinks otherwise, anybody who thinks that the electoral system is going to stop him, I don't think so. We thought impeachment was a way to get rid of presidents. The dude's been impeached 3 times. There's no way to stop him. I think he's going to use whatever system he can. And I think as we get into 2026 and 7, we're going to start to hear that rhetoric about abolishing the term limits. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's true as well.
Really?
No, I really do think because he did say that. He did say that when he becomes president, you're not going to have to vote again. So I think he's going to talk about abolishing term limits.
I don't know if that was the context of that, but listen, I'm going to just say for the record, I don't think that he'll be successful. I think the country will stop him, but I absolutely believe he's going to attempt to run a 3rd time because he's not going to take no for an answer if he survives. I genuinely believe it. We'll see. You
just
think?
Imagine, you're saying no, Gambit. Just imagine him going up on stage and saying, "I resign. I'm no longer running. I'm going to secede to the next person." Can you even imagine this dude ever once lending any credence to anyone that is not himself? Can you even picture it?
So I can see him being extremely narcissistic for sure, or selfish, all of that for sure. I think chances that he tries to run or coup the nation in 2028, I would give it like a 3 out of a 100. That's how. Yeah, like that's how far away. I don't think it's reasonable. I think it was a good talking point for Democrats to try to energize people to vote. But I just don't feel that way. I feel like he's a bad guy and like he's terrible and he's like a 3 out of 100 as a human being. But I don't think I'm not at all afraid that we may never have another president that's not Trump or somebody that he tries to install. I don't like. I think he'll do the rhetoric thing. I think whoever runs for the Republican side in 2028, he's going to say, "Oh, they're going to try to fix the election." He's going to try to sow seeds of like discontent with the election process. I can see that for sure. But him actually trying to be president for a 3rd time, I can't see that at all. So if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to admit that I was wrong. I just don't. I don't see it.
The reason why I could see it is because I could already see the twist coming. Remember, they still say that the 2020 election was stolen.
For sure.
So they're so because they say that the 2020 election was stolen, they're gonna be like, that was supposed to be my term, and I need to do that term again. You see what I'm saying? They're gonna do some BS like that. That's what they're gonna. I'm telling you right now, they're gonna say some BS like that, and people are actually gonna believe that shit. People are actually gonna believe that stupid shit. They'll be like, okay, since 2020, Trump didn't get his fair term, and 2028 he had to fix things, or 2024 he had to fix things. In 2028 he should do another term because 2020 he's the one that deserved that one. It's gonna be crazy. Trust me, it's gonna be crazy. But I wouldn't be surprised if he says something like that. But as far as the memes being so important now, one thing that I've also said before is that what the left needs to understand at this moment is that memes are more important than information. Yeah, I mean, you can give a person a lot of information, but you show them a meme that they think is funny. And I've seen right-wing memes. Like I have a friend of mine who's a quote-unquote moderate. Yeah, I mean, we already know what moderate means nowadays. He's a quote-unquote moderate, and he posts right-wing memes, and it's all crap. You know what I'm saying? It's all crap. It's about the most uncharitable takes of the left that you can ever hear in your life. But he finds it funny, and his friends find it funny. And they think that this is the correct information. Like on their when it comes to like things like reproductive rights. I still remember a meme that he shared, and the meme is literally a woman yelling at a child in a bed saying, "I need to kill my unborn children." That was the meme, and I'm like, this is what you think abortion rights are, or this is what you think reproductive rights are. That's the information that you're getting. Like it's funny to him, but it's like, because he posted it on a Funny Friday in a political group I know about. But it's like, that's what you think it's funny, but you also think this is the correct information. You know what I mean? Reproductive rights, no matter how much you feel about it, it's way more complex than I want to kill unborn children. You know what I'm saying? It's way more complex than that. So, but the fact is that it's a meme, it's easily digestible, and that's the information that he has from now forward.
Yeah.
Now, does the left need to?
Oh, go ahead.
Right. Does the left need to get memey? Maybe. maybe we do need to go on to Joe Rogan. Maybe we do need to sit with Aiden Ross, even though Aiden Ross is a complete idiot. You know what I mean? Maybe we do need to sit with people like that. And maybe we do need to come up with our own memes, because for a while, I don't know if anyone remembered, but for a while, probably during Obama, a little bit in Obama, after Obama, the left was putting out memes. I mean, we was putting out those memes, but like we didn't do that anymore because we figured out that, we should talk to people and then debate instead. And Fanatiq's in the whole debate sphere. He knows about that. But yeah, we decided to do that instead, which is okay, which is cool. Yeah, I mean, but like again, if memes are more important than information, how exactly do you combat that? Do you become memey yourself, or do you like debate against the meme? What do you do at that point? We need to understand, like, this is how people absorb information. It's easily digestible. It's a picture. And the thing about memes is that they're more than just internet pictures. They're more than just internet jokes. They're a behavioral idea. It's in psychology. You can look this up in psychology. A meme is a behavioral idea. So the moment you put the idea out there, like Inception was right. Like you can really force someone to accept an idea without them knowing it, just by you suggesting things to them. You see what I mean? So it's like we need to find a way to combat that. Otherwise, otherwise another person who comes up in 2028, if Trump doesn't try to get elected, he's just gonna be another meme guy. You know what I mean? And guess what? He's gonna win because people find it entertaining. And that's the danger of mixing entertainment with politics. I saw this a while ago because when I was studying politics in college, I was like, people are really mixing entertainment with politics, and it's going to end up bad because whoever entertains you more is the one who's going to win. Is that really how you want to run the country? Whoever's the most entertaining? You know what I mean? And if that's the case, then all Democrats need to do is find, run Cat Williams or something like that and have them roast the other side, and boom, we'll win. You know what I mean? Just do that. I'm guessing. But like, you can't, like politics needs to be more than this entertainment. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be more than memes. But how do we combat it? Because that's where we are now.
Well, yeah, I think a big problem is that like I said earlier, is that the Democrats were on that moral high ground kind of ride right now. We don't want to make memes, make light of things that are taken very seriously, and we don't want to lie. And that puts us very much behind a right-wing establishment who's willing and able to do both. We're in a post-truth society, for sure. That doesn't mean that truth doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that truth doesn't exist. It just means that truth is not the primary moving factor as much as it is like the cultural zeitgeist of what people want to believe. We have to do something about it, but I don't think the answer, like we've all been saying, the answer is not, we just ignore what's happening. We ignore the memes. We pretend. I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that the start is to acknowledge it and start to work these things into our arguments. Just saying that something's factually incorrect is just obviously not enough anymore. It has to have some feelings on it as well.
Sure. I feel like, man, listen, it does need all of that. We do need the memes. We need the information to be correct, all of those things. But I also feel like, man, we need honesty within ourselves, because even when it comes to questions like abortion, we don't call abortion, we call it reproductive rights. And then we start having these arguments where we're really arguing past each other. And here's why. Because for some people, the right, what they're talking about very frequently is specifically abortion. I don't want abortion. That's it. Right? The left is like, no, it's reproductive rights. And then, of course, now that starts talking about like contraceptives and all sorts of other things, right? And then what ends up happening is, instead of us being able to have a genuine conversation about abortion, it's like now you're like obfuscating abortion into a bunch of other things. And so then the right gets extremely caustic and disgusting and like just eliminating all conversations about it altogether by passing like really draconian, really disgusting like abortion bans that end up costing people their lives, right? There's a woman who, like, they need to terminate the pregnancy in order for her to survive. I have a cousin that's gone through that because her heart couldn't handle it. And it's like, it's you or the baby. In that situation, I'm always going to say, please kill that baby, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But now we're at a point where, because the left has been unwilling to actually genuinely engage in the conversation, we can't get there. And I feel like the reason why the left was so genuinely why we refused to genuinely engage for all this time was because they had won. Roe v. Wade was inside of whatever, so I don't have to actually entertain the conversation. All I'll do is I'll just label you a misogynist. I'll say that you don't care about women's bodies. I'll say you don't care about healthcare, and that's all I got to do. I did the labeling thing. I don't have to engage you. It's over. Now we can't actually have a real conversation. We've never been able to do it. You're instantly labeled a hate monger because if you're saying, hey, I believe I'm pro-life, right? So now we can't have genuine conversations, and it happens that way with a lot of things, even when it comes to like trans stuff, right? Where it'll be like, for their health care. And it's like, the right is like very clearly saying, I don't think you should transition kids. And instead of that, it'll be like, you want to deny trans kids health care. And it's like, not necessarily. If we were talking about like therapy and stuff like that, plenty of people would be on board with that. Like, but now you're just like, no, any affirming care whatsoever is out of the window. So a lot of times this stuff is getting like reframed, repurposed, and not genuine. So then we can't actually have real conversations. And the right is really simple. Them niggas they're not in any kind of deep thought about any of it. It's really simple. Right. I'm pro-life. That's it. But now, so you don't care about women's bodies and their right to health care. And it's like that. No, if you were talking about Obamacare for women, I mean, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about abortions. And there's always this reframing. And I feel like that's losing because the right, because of their simplicity, every time we try to rephrase it in order to make it sound a little bit more palatable, like, and ameliorate what the actual issue is into something more pleasant, every time we're doing that, we're not actually winning. Maybe you sound good to yourself. The right just hears you like, oh, this person isn't being genuine. They're not being honest. And they're still not actually addressing the issue that I care about. So I'm voting against them. We need honesty.
Yeah.
No, I completely. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, just really quick. One thing that's been interesting me on the abortion issue. So me, I'll never be pro-abortion for sure, ever. Now there are the obvious outliers: rape, incest, mother's life. All of those like clarifications. I'm always for those. But me personally, just as a personal person, if I'm talking to one of my friends and they're like, I'm thinking about getting an abortion, I'm never encouraging them to do that ever. It'll never happen. I think one thing that like speaks to Fanatiq's point, Democrats never talk about any restrictions that they'll put, even when given like as much room as they need. It's like in the debate, they were like, "Oh, hey, would you support late term abortions?" And the talking point, I think it sounds good to Democrats, and like, but it's like disgusting. Is, oh, well, those don't happen frequently. But you can still have a rule. I can have a rule that people shouldn't murder, even though murder isn't common and happening everywhere. So the inability to like elucidate their like real positions is crazy to me. Because if you want, just say, hey, I am okay with late term abortions. Don't just say, oh, well, we shouldn't even have a conversation about that because the frequency of them is not enough. So I don't think people understand how like off putting that type of rhetoric is, rather than actually revealing your position. Because I just want to know who people are. I just want to know what you think. So when you say a conversation can't even be broached, what is that? You're a politician. Like, what do you mean we can't talk about the policy that you might support? So I don't think people understand how like off-putting that is. But when it comes to all the other stuff that's under the umbrella of reproductive hair, access to contraception, blah blah, of course I'm like extreme fan of all of that. I'll just personally, for me, I'll never be okay with like, I'm having an economic situation. I'm finna YOLO this life. It's crazy to me.
I feel you. I mean, I think one of the reasons why it became from abortion to reproductive rights, especially from what I saw in my area, is because they actually were making it harder to get contraceptives and trying to only put abstinence-only education in school. So it became from, let's talk about abortion, to all reproductive rights, because these conservative politicians, especially in the local areas, were actually trying to limit those things. You know what I mean? So now we got to talk about all of it now. You know what I mean? But like, it is correct that what Fanatiq said, when most people talk about it on a one-to-one setting, they're talking about this specific thing. Like, I don't think, Cletus or Joe Bob from Arkansas wants to take away birth control. They're talking about specifically abortion. So if I'm coming to him, this city slicker talking about reproductive rights and you're a misogynist, they might not even know what the fuck that even means. Like, what are you talking about? I'm talking about abortion. You know what I mean? They're not gonna know what the hell that means. And no, what it means like they're not smart enough to get it. They are going to get it, but it's not what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So it's I do agree that like we actually need to have the conversation. Like for example, with me, when I do these type of when I'm on my streams and I do this type of debates, I already tell them like, yes, I'm pro-choice. I don't believe a fetus is a person until 24 weeks because that's when they gain sentience. I just tell them straight up. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, it's alive. It's a body, but once it hits 24 weeks and they actually have a brain and actually can have sentience, then I agree that it's a person and it has rights. And if an abortion happens, it should only be for the life of the mother. Otherwise, if you want an abortion, it should be the ones that keep the fetus alive. That's what I always say. Yeah, I mean, and then we can go ahead and have a discussion on that. Now, me, I'm not a believer, a Bible or a religious person. You know, I mean, I don't believe in souls or anything like that. So if a person says that it has a soul to it, I'm going to tell them that, okay, do you think it has a soul? I don't. Yeah, I mean, this is not how we actually do policy. We don't run policy that way. You see what I'm saying? So like, we have to get to a point where we actually understand each other, and just like Kaya said, have an honest conversation. And when it comes to transitioning children, you know, I mean, just like Fanatiq said, when it comes to things like therapy and helping kids out and stuff like that, of course, I think everybody agrees with that. It's just that the reason I think why the language gets conflated is because when it comes to things like gender affirming care, therapy is included in that. See what I'm saying? So it's like I think like the language, just like how we're saying, is it gets to a point where it's so ambiguous. Like language can have ambiguity. We all know that. But because the language around this and the conversation around this, the language around it is so like, obfuscating and blurry and opaque. It's basically gets to what you guys are talking about, talking past each other instead of getting to the actual issue. You see what I mean?
I want to ask you something directly though, because I like one of Fanatiq's critiques a lot, so I want to get your thoughts on it. I think the left does this purposefully. I think under the gender affirming care umbrella, there's therapy, there's mastectomies, and all the other things that happen. There's puberty blockers, there's all of these different things. I think instead of having policy discussions about those different things, the left chooses to say it's an umbrella and give me all of it or give me none of it. And then the right says, well, I'm going to give you none of it. And then they start to create laws against the entire enterprise, right? What do you feel the left's agency in that is, and how do you think they're using it, and how should they change it?
This is exactly what you said. They make it all an umbrella term. You know what I mean? There's not going to be everyone who agrees with a 16-year-old getting a mastectomy. Now, me, I'm the type of person that I mind the business that pays me. If that 16-year-old trans female to male wants to get a mastectomy, her parents understand it, her doctors understand it. They all talk about the risks, and they all still choose to go with it. That's on you now. If you regret it later, you chose that. Because you knew the risk, your parents knew the risk, your doctors told you. You know what I mean? So that's on you now.
You knew the risk is the murky part. But we should go into that conversation.
I mean, man. Yeah, you're right. We can't.
I know it's murky. Yeah, I know it's a discussion for another. I know it's murky, but I think before surgery all happens, they all tell them what the risks are. You know what I mean? These things don't, in my opinion, these things don't happen quick either. But as far as what you were saying, they do that. They amalgamate all these into just one thing and then break it down later. What needs to happen is that exactly how I said. It said, listen, gender affirming care lists these things. There's puberty blockers. There's like social transitioning, like pronouns, wearing certain clothes, etc. And then finally there's things like surgery or whatever. And I said the first place you start with is social transitioning with therapy, pronouns, and the way that they dress. That's the first step. Always. You know what I mean? Now when it comes to puberty blockers and surgeries, which again, even if we say surgeries are rare, surgeries can still happen. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the part that most people have an issue with. Yeah, I mean, that's when you get to the conversation of, they're going after the kids to mutilate and castrate them and et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot of charged language that is way more complex than people getting mutilated and castrated and, 7-year-old boys chopping off their penis. That's not really what's happening. Yeah, if you know what I'm saying. But because the left does not do a good job of breaking down these issues and saying this is the umbrella and these are all the things that are under the umbrella and these are what we're going to be talking about. It all gets into, the drag queens want 8-year-old girls to, put a dildo on or something. You know what I mean? That's the conversation that happens. And it is happening because, trust me, it happened on my streams. And I'm on Instagram right now with someone telling me that, yes, 7-year-old boys were cutting off their penis because they thought they were a girl. They're literally telling me that. And I'm like, this is not what's happening. It's way more complex than that. And like, yes, this is a complex issue. So we need to talk about it complexly. I think the first thing that the left needs to do is say that all these things are included in gender affirming care, but the first step that always happens is social transitioning. Pronouns, certain type of dresses or whatever they're going to wear, and etc. and therapy, stuff like that. Are you okay with that? Because when I was talking to my family who are not really with the trans thing, when I told them like this is what they're going to be doing, are you okay with that? Even that's a hard conversation to have because, of course, I'm assuming if you guys are Christian, my Haitians are very, very Christian. They don't believe that men should be wearing dresses or boys should be wearing dresses. They don't believe in that. Now, the only thing I can tell them is like, I understand that you believe that, but this society isn't built on what you believe. You know what I'm saying? So like, this is what's happening to these people. They have this issue. This is what's going on in their mind and in their disposition. Are you going to make laws that goes against that? Because if you do, what is the consequence? So I think right now the left needs to start talking like that, like basically breaking down these issues one by one, and then actually getting people to understand and basically not talk about this as an all-encompassing thing. You know what I mean? Like, you can say that this is the umbrella and these are the things under the umbrella. What do you disagree with, and how do we get to a point where we can actually pass a policy? You see what I mean? Does all that make sense?
Yeah, I want to just say really quickly, even within a lot of these things, I think that it's happening. For example, when we talk about sex education, I mean, if you were to ask anybody when I was growing up, sex education is absolutely important. Love it. It's a good thing. We don't want like uninformed children. It's a part of life. They need to learn this at a certain age, especially when they're about to be hitting puberty, because some parents aren't going to have those conversations. I believe it. It makes all the sense in the world. But roped into sex education, there's a bunch of nonsense too. So then at this point, when you start talking about, we're going to start talking to kindergartners and spend a certain amount of time with kindergartners about sex education, it's like, wait, I think that's a little bit early. I don't think I should be talking to a 5-year-old about what sex is and what sexual penetration is. That's crazy. So then again, a lot of stuff starts getting roped up where they just have an agenda of early sexualization, and I think some of those things are absolutely harmful, and then now we can't have genuine conversations because then you want to say, no, you just want to abolish sex education altogether, which sometimes is what ends up happening is people throw out the baby with the bathwater because they don't like everything that it encompasses in the first place. So they're doing that. And I want to point out also that the right place hide the stick. When they start labeling everything as critical race theory, any kind of discussion about race whatsoever is now just critical race theory, and our kids don't need it. So now they're not actually being honest about what it is. I agree, anti-racism was absolutely disgusting. Ibram X. Kendi set us back a bunch of years. I can't stand that man. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I don't think we should be learning about our history. So the right does the same thing on their cultural issues that are important to them in order to accomplish their agenda. So what politics has become is just one big game of dishonesty and hide the stick. This is the thing that I really like want to hide my racism, so I'll just attack critical race theory and label everything that would actually educate people as critical race theory. I did it. I really want
woke.
Right, or wokeism, or I really like have an agenda towards early sexualization of children, and I'm going to label it all as sexual education and gender affirming care. And now I kind of get away with my agenda, right? And so I think both of them are being very dishonest in that way, and I think there are nuances within each of these things, because I do believe in sex education. I don't know about teaching I do know. I don't want you teaching 5-year-olds about, whatever. I don't think you should be putting that, even with that framework, in the mind of young 5-year-olds about what transgenderism is when they're not fully comfortable within themselves, with their own systems. They're trying to understand the world, and right now, we're teaching them through exceptions, right? It's like when you're teaching English, when you're teaching reading, you don't start with the silent E, you don't start with the KN, you start with the basics and the ones that are the most common. Now that you have a good working of that, a good knowledgeable working system of how this language, how the alphabet works, then we can start going into, hey, sometimes E is silent. Then we can go in sometimes K is silent, right? That's when you start doing that. You don't start with the exceptions, and you're doing that when you're telling a 5-year-old about transgenderism and non-binaryism. That's crazy to me. So this is all being roped in there. Same thing when it comes to abortion. These things kind of bother me because I see videos where someone's like, here, let me just show you. So a woman calls up to Planned Parenthood and it's just like, hey, I'm 7 months pregnant, but I need to abort this baby. Can we do it? And the woman is giving her these like things, and she's saying like, "Well, there's a way we can register it." And she's like, "Well, okay, but can I do it for sure?" Like, they're like, "Yeah, we can. We have to do it this way." And she's like explaining to her what the process is. So what's the process like, and when can I come in? And they're like, "We're gonna look for the earliest appointment, but yes, it can still be done. You can do this." And so then it's like, when you start saying that to some people are gonna be very, very, very disturbed by that. Now, I need to know: is this video absolutely a hoax? I don't believe that it is. I think there are people within those institutions that will absolutely do this. So then now we can't just label it as this isn't worthy of a conversation. We have to be honest about the fact some people truly don't care. Some people truly are fine with that. Now you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You want to say, I'm not having a conversation about this altogether, even though I know for a fact this is something that some people believe in practice and it is occurring, even if it's a hyper minority. It is occurring. So then now we can't have genuine conversations, because I know that if you do have that conversation, now you have to actually start making the growth or actually proving or clarifying what your actual position is, because now you can't just dismiss it. You got to tell me, do you actually support late-term abortions? And for some of them, the answer is yes, which of course is going to be a crazy turnoff to the right, which is going to make them throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so now it gets really, really convoluted. But I would be fine with them throwing out the baby with the bathwater if both sides are going to be dishonest like that. I understand why you're doing it, and it's fine to me. I need honesty. We need transparency so we can actually make progress on all of these issues. There's no way Trump should win as dishonest as he is, but he's able to do so because the left is dishonest too. I think he's probably the most overt lying politician that's ever existed, being honest. I genuinely think Trump is. I know most politicians lie in my opinion, but I think Trump is on a whole nother level. But because of the rampant dishonesty on the left through obfuscation, intentional distortion, intentional putting everything under one giant penumbra so that you can go ahead and pass your agenda, all of those things right there, I would say are enough that make it to where Trump still has a potential to win, because the right can point to the left dishonesty too. I'm going to end there.
All right.
No, I could agree with that.
Let's just real quick. I think we should probably start to go into the sort of closing / epilogue statements here. So real quick, we'll go around, give you kind of your final take on the matter, and then I want you also to say, going forward for these next 4 years here, are you feeling pessimistic or optimistic, and why? Anybody would like to start?
Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
We all these at the same time.
Yeah, he did.
That's so funny.
Okay, I can
go ahead.
I can go and round it off. Everything Fanatiq said, I agree with. We need to start having honesty and not obfuscating these issues. If you support, because I've seen people say that they support like something like abortion all 9 months, and when I ask them to clarify, they say that an abortion doesn't necessarily have to kill the fetus or the baby. Okay, cool. So if that's the case, say that. You know what I'm saying? So we need to have the honesty around those discussions and make your positions clear. Democrats need to address the fact that they've been operating on benign neglect, and that's not going to work anymore. You need to actually start addressing systemic issues. The left as a grassroots, we need to confront misinformation. Whether we're going to do it with memes, whether we're going to do it with jokes, or whether we're going to do it with debate, we need to start addressing misinformation and clarifying our positions. No more opaqueness, Be straight up with it. Be real with it. You feel me? If you support a trans teenage girl getting mastectomy, say you support that. Yeah, I mean, if you don't support that and you don't know, say it. Honestly, I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean, just be honest with it. Say you support care, but you don't know about this. Like, be honest and say this is still a discussion. Be honest with everything that that you're saying. Our politicians, we know our politicians are going to be liars, but at the end of the day, there is a way to move the Overton window for all of America. Before Bernie Sanders, universal health care was one of the most toxic things that you can say in politics. Before Bernie Sanders, if Bernie Sanders went up on the Democratic ticket and talked about universal health care, you talk to any middle America person from North Carolina, Tennessee, or Arkansas, they would say they will be fine with with universal health care right now. He was able to move that window. All right, so like we need to start being honest. Talk about systemic issues on a broad stage. Move that window. Talk about universal healthcare on that stage. Move that window. Talk about any minority rights, reproductive rights, trans rights, any of those rights on a national stage. Say what you support. Be honest with it. We need to do that all from the grassroots all the way up to the top. I know politicians are usually liars, but you need to come up with a way to communicate these issues in a way that's going to galvanize your base and gain people to trust you more. Admit your mistakes and do what you can to apologize and move towards the future. This is things that the left needs and it has not been doing, and we need to do more of it.
Okay, and going forward, next 4 years, are you pessimistic or optimistic?
Oh, things are gonna go to shit. I predict there's gonna be either a major recession or depression. History rhymes more than it repeats, and we're seeing history rhyme right now. History is rhyming right now with 2000. It's rhyming with 1920s. It's all rhyming. The stock market is up. We have a demagogue in office and fervent conservatism and populism. Fervent conservative populism we have right now. They all happen during Bush, it happened during Hoover, it happened during Nixon, and it was all it all followed with either a huge economic recession or depression. So that's what I predict for the next 4 years. Of course, the racists are now emboldened. What black people need to do now that the racists are emboldened is do what Fanatiq did. All right, do your gun drills. Get out and get you your weapons. Be prepared because we saw the Nazis marching. All right, we saw the Nazis marching. You're gonna see a lot more of that. For our allies, yeah, I mean, help us out any way that you can. Use any privilege that you have, use any income that you have to help us out. That don't mean abandon your family, of course, just to help us out. But be our ally. Be an actual ally if you're going to be an ally. That's my prediction for the next 4 years.
And where can people find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Volsy Thoughts. You can also find me on TikTok, the same thing, Volsy Thoughts. And on Instagram as well. I do live streams, and I'm going to be planning panels within the next few months called Nuance in Black. It's going to be about Black issues. I definitely want Gambit and Fanatiq on those panels as well. I'll let y'all know when I launch that.
Cool.
Very cool. Well, thank you for coming.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Gambit, would you like to go?
Okay. Yeah. So first off, I want to say this was amazing conversation. I'm really happy I was here. Appreciate you, Fanatiq, for the invite, and appreciate the topics. And this was great. A couple of things I didn't get to touch on, just in closing. We talked about post-truth society. I think in a lot of ways we've been here. It just haven't been as evident, right? We are part of a nation that said Black people were different than white people and were animals. And that was truth, even though the obvious evidence that it wasn't true, right? So I think over time, we've always embraced ideas that are not true, regardless of the underlying data. So I wouldn't say we're now in a post-truth society. This is just the next wave of nonsense that's happening. When we talked about entertainment, one of the things I wanted to bring up is what I think is pretty much racism by the Democrat Party. I don't like that the way to reach us politically is to get Megan Good to shake her ass on stage, and that's the extent of political activism within the Black community. I think they should sit down with Black leaders and have like deep, in-depth conversations. But I think that would create a accountability matrix that they don't want. So their goal is to say, hey, get LeBron James and Megan Good and these people to say, hey, vote for me, and that's all you dumb black niggas need because all y'all care about is entertainment, right? So I think the way that the Democratic Party even interacts with the black community is disgusting to me. When it comes to abortion, even though I do have religious and other basis, I also think it's a political and an economic issue. I think we can agree, like we talked about, things like reparations are seen as inflammatory topics. The less and less of us that exists when these things do seem to be targeted to our communities, whether it's infrastructure and otherwise, the less and less of us that exist, the less likely we're going to have political activism to pass these things. So not only am I against reparations for like just personal and religious reasons, I'm also against for economic and political reasons. And I think that's something that should be able to reach secular people as well. So I think the entire institution can't help us, given that we're a shrinking minority in this country, and the Democratic Party is starting to talk to the growing minorities who aren't engaging in abortion at the same rates. So I think there's lots of arguments against abortion, secular and non-secular. But I also think Democrats, one thing that we didn't talk about, things like what happened with RGB and not being able to replace her, which may now happen with Sotomayor, I can't think of how you pronounce her name, and Trump is going to have elected the most people in history. Like, some of this is the Democrats' fault. Like, Trump is a bad person, but they're like giving him the ability to be worse and worse, right? So I think strategy. I think the Democratic Party doesn't care about black people. I think from a strategic perspective, they're incredibly dumb. So because of this, the answer to Pon's question, I'm doomer about the next 4 years or the next however many years we want to say, because I don't think Democrats possess the will to help my people, and by my people I mean black people, all black people. And I also don't think they have the intelligence to even do the things that they are energized to do. So yeah, so I'm pretty doomer on all of that. But yeah, so I'm GSU Gambit. You can only find me on Twitter because I don't stream these days. But I love to join panel. So yeah, I would definitely appreciate the invite. And if not at any time you want to invite me, I'll be back.
Okay. So how do I feel over the next 4 years? I actually feel somewhat optimistic. I feel like a lot of the responses that people have are from fragility because they've never been in a position where they felt this afraid before. I'm a black man living in America. I've never felt like any president was really going to have my back. I didn't feel that way about Obama before he got elected. When that woman said, "Oh, I'm so glad because now I'm not going to have to worry about putting gas in my car and paying my mortgage because if I take care of him, he's going to take care of me," I thought she was absolutely insane. That was one of the most crazy things. It blew my mind at the time. I just didn't understand why a person would ever put that kind of stock inside of a politician. But then you got to also remember, I came from the era when Bill Clinton passed that crime bill, and it directly impacted some of my immediate family members. So the idea that the idea that either side was going to ever work for me was crazy. I survived Bush presidency. I survived Clinton's presidency, which was absolutely disgusting for us, right? So then, and then Obama's presidency again did nothing. So I've always had a doomer mentality. Do I think still that yes, I would rather not Trump because of just how disgusting he is? Sure, but the fact of the matter was, it didn't matter who won. We weren't going to be helped. Kamala wasn't going to do nothing that was only going to benefit black people. No. Remember how she said that? So I didn't have this newfound insane terror. It's like, man, now what might actually happen is that other people are going to be in similar boats and circumstances, and so the government might actually do stuff to fix that. You see, student loan debt, it was going to widen the racial wealth gap because disproportionately that stuff was going to benefit white folks. But ultimately, there were a lot of black people that were going to get some insane benefits from that student loan debt, forgiveness. So the idea is now that more white people are going to experience the terror, I think we're going to start having these conversations. I'm pro radicalization. I know radical is generally an unfavorable term, but I think that this system is so corrupt and so disgusting that we do need to radically alter it. It needs to be altered radically, and I think Trump's presidency and the disgustingness that nigga's about to do over this next 2 to 4 years is going to blow everyone's mind. Niggas is going to be radical. Reparations, to some, would be a radical idea, and I'm all for radical ideas. So because of that, I'm actually not nearly as doomer. I know I'm going to survive. I'm also a very, very practicing Christian. So for me, I know that God got me. I'm gonna be all right,
Yeah.
regardless of the circumstances. I know God's gonna protect me. God's gonna have me. So then I'm not so worried. Like, I worry for the country. Like, I worry for the collective. I worry for the trajectory. I don't personally worry. I'm excited there might be some actual benefits just because of the radicalization that's going to happen. So that's where I stand. You can find me. My name is Fanatiq, Fanatiq. Thank you to everybody who's been in the comments. I've been reading and kind of chatting with a few of you. Some of my friends have stopped by on the YouTube, and I've never really streamed on YouTube. That's crazy. There's more people on YouTube than there was on Twitch at one point. So I appreciate you guys for coming by. You can find me as under the name Fanatiq, Fanatiq, on Spotify for my music or whatever music service you do. This everywhere. And then you can find me as Mr. Fanatiq on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch. YouTube is Ask Fanatiq. But if you're seeing this, you probably already know that. But yeah, you can find me on there. I want to be doing these panels every Wednesday. I typically do a panel, the podcast with Trihex every Thursday. I believe it's canceled tomorrow. He's running into some computer problems. So I might try to do some impromptu panel tomorrow as well. We'll see how that goes. But either way, yeah, you can find me on all those platforms. Thank you guys for coming by. Please don't forget to hit the Discord. You can obviously reach us there. Let us know ways that we can improve this content. Leave comments, like, subscribe and share and all that good stuff.
Nice. I'll be quick. I am also not doomer. I am also feeling pretty optimistic. Now I would say I'm cautiously optimistic because I'm very worried that obviously there's going to be some serious changes that can happen. But one of the things about America, if you've lived here, is that it's very, very hard to change core things about our country. It's one of our biggest pros and it's one of our biggest cons, is that we cannot change things easily. So hopefully there will be some kind of resistance to that. Going forward, yes, like I said, I'm optimistic, and I think the way forward is just more and more conversations. We got to stop with in my opinion, I think we just have to stop with fact-based arguments in general. At this point, everybody just has their own separate set of facts. And most people don't believe most people believe those facts because of an underlying set of feelings. I think talking about those feelings is much more important, and in my opinion, much more fruitful of a conversation. I don't think you're ever going to convince a Republican that the weather machines don't exist, but you can talk to them about their childhood, about the way they were raised, when they started believing in conspiracy theories. And maybe you can help them to understand that they're more likely to believe in a conspiracy theory because of their raising and not because it's something that's factually true, because they found this hidden thing that no one else can find. I think the only way forward is with conversation, care, and more importantly than anything else, we have to actually listen to the other side and not assume that they believe what they believe because they're evil, horrible morons, but rather that they believe what they believe because they have a completely different set of facts in a post-fact world. And they just need someone to reach out and to show them. And hopefully over these next few years, these people will come back to Twitch seeing that, okay, our guy won, we can come here, we can gloat a little bit. Sure, let's do that. Let's have this conversation. If you're on the right and you're watching these things and you're thinking, I want to get on there, get on here. Your opinion needs to be heard so that it can be attacked and scrutinized, and we can decide who the better idea is with listening instead of yelling at each other with one-shots on Twitter. And I'm Just Pawns. You can find me on Twitch, Just Pawns, and YouTube, Just Pawns. I don't really stream a lot these days, but I probably will be getting back into it. And thank you very much for everyone who is here, and thank you very much for Fanatiq for having me on the show.
All right, that was a successful one. I'm glad it kind of came together at the last minute. I'll do better in the future. We were supposed to end around 7. We went late because we started so late. That's why we time that we did. In the future, we'll try to actually aim for 5 to 7. Thank y'all for coming by. Escape and float into my